All right. All right. And I'm also going to record. Oh, well, let's get the whole setup here. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the queer artist who created the most iconic lesbian and gay New York historical landmark, with Maria Teresa Cometto, author of Emma and the Angel of Central Park, and in conversation with Allen Ellenzweig. Thank you for coming out on this cold and rainy day. My name is Greg Newton. I am the co-founder of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division, along with my partner, Donnie Jocham. The Bureau is the space you are in now, in case you didn't know that. We are an all-volunteer queer bookstore, independent, and we've been in existence since 2012. We just celebrated our 12th anniversary, and we have been here at the center since 2014. Tonight, we're being helped by our volunteer, Ryan Warden. Thank you very much, Ryan. And yes, before I get started, I wanted to just pass it back for donation. So we always say, give what you can, if you can. And especially if you know you won't be buying a book, we ask you to make a donation if you're able to. So there's some change in the bag, which I'll pass. And there's also a QR code for Venmo if you'd like to give this way. And those of you online, if you would like to make a donation, can do so on Venmo at BGSQD, so our initials. So the Bureau is open Wednesdays through Sundays from 1 to 7 p.m. And then we often stay open later when we have events such as this. And if you're not already on our email list, you can sign up for that at the back of the room or on our website, bgsqd.com. And you'll get a newsletter every other Monday about our many upcoming events. So before I introduce our speakers, I wanted to read a land acknowledgement and a statement of solidarity with the people of Palestine. So the Bureau acknowledges that our organization operates on the unceded land of the Munsee Lenape. We encourage you to join the Bureau in signing up to make a monthly donation to the American Indian Community Houses Mannahatta Fund. The Mannahatta Fund, according to its website, is an invitation to all settlers and non-native people who wish to acknowledge the legacy of theft and genocide that comprise the history of New York City and the United States. And you can find out more at mannahattafund.org. The Bureau also recognizes Palestinian liberation as a queer issue. As queer people, we know the pain of being cast out. We have been and continue to be despised by many, even by our own families, parents, and communities of origin. This reality evokes in many of us a deep empathy with others who are likewise seen not as fully human, but as problems to be solved, questions for which the answer is ultimately elimination and erasure. As we watch the ongoing genocide of Palestinians by the State of Israel, carried out with the full support of our government and funded by our tax dollars, we witness the inevitable results of defining a people solely as a threat to the safety and well-being of those deemed inherently worthy of life. This horror compels us to speak out, not only against the current bombardment and siege of Gaza by the State of Israel, but against the historical and ongoing violent displacement of Palestinians by Zionists and the conditions of occupation and apartheid under which Palestinians have been forced to live for over 75 years. In our longing for a very different reality, we take inspiration from the words of Jose Esteban Munoz, who wrote, "Queerness is essentially about the rejection of a here and now and an insistence on potentiality or concrete possibility for another world." And that is from Munoz's 2009 book, Cruising Utopia, which we sell here at the Bureau and which I highly recommend. So let me introduce our speakers. So Maria Teresa Cometto, journalist, author, curator, was born in Novara, Italy. In 2000, she moved to New York with her family. She is a regular contributor to the leading Italian daily, I'll do it as best I can, Corriere della Sera.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
She has written several books, including the biography, Emma and the Angel of Central Park, La Marchesa Colombi, Life, Novels, and Passions of the first woman journalist of Corriere della Sera, Brothers of the Mountains, Arturo and Orestes Quinoval, From the Alps to the Himalayas, and Tech and the City, The Making of New York's Startup Community. And Allen Ellenzweig has published arts criticism and cultural commentary in magazines such as Art in America, The Village Voice, and American Photographer. He is a regular contributing writer to the bi-monthly Gay and Lesbian Review. His first book, The Homoerotic Photograph, Male Images from Durieux Delacroix to Maplethorpe, was a landmark historical study published by Columbia University Press. His recent biography, George Platt Lynes, The Daring Eye, is a life of the 20th century gay American photographer, George Platt Lynes. Please give them both a very warm welcome.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you to the audience from the web. And thank you, Bureau, for the hospitality. So we are here to talk about Emma Stebbins, the author, the artist who created one of the most iconic monuments in New York City, but a monument that was already acknowledged 25 years ago, if we can show the first image.
Yes.
By the first guide to lesbian and gay historical landmarks in New York. You will see in a while the cover, the pink cover. Anyway, it is also the Angel of the Waters on top of the Bethesda fountain. He the protagonist of Angels in America. I think we have a little technical problem. Very soon solved. So, notwithstanding all this, almost nobody knows that here it is. Okay, so here it is, the cover of this guide that was published 25 years ago. Next. Okay, so this is the final scene of Angels in America. This is the movie on HBO, and it's when the protagonist talks about the future where he envisioned a world where gays don't have to hide anymore. The funny thing is that he didn't know, the author didn't know that the sculpture, that the Angel of the Waters was made by a queer artist. So it's an interesting coincidence, right? The thing that interested me, not only, of course, the beauty of the fountain, of the Angel of the Waters, but the fact that it was made in Italy. So it is this very iconic monument in New York City, but Emma Stebbins, the artist, made it while she was living and working in Italy from 1856 to 1870. And the other extraordinary thing for an American woman living in the Rome of the Pope, because at that time the popes were still in charge of the kingdom of the Vatican, is that she was living in Rome with a wife, Charlotte Cushman, a very famous American actress. And they were living in a community of American women artists. 8 of them were sculptors, quite an amazing thing. Never before and never afterwards there were so many American women sculptors in the same city working together. So 4 out of 8, they were living with a woman companion. They were living more or less like a couple, yeah, a marriage, exactly. So they were defined by Henry James like a strange sisterhood of American lady sculptors who at one time settled upon the seven hills in a white marmorean flock. That was the definition, a little condescending, I think, about these artists. They were all friends, united by the same feelings of independence, creativity, ambition, and looking for freedom, both artistic freedom and personal freedom, so many miles away from the families and their puritanical mores and customs. So
my first question is, what was Emma's family and social background that gave her access to an early education in art?
Emma Stebbins was born in New York City in 1815, and she was in a very wealthy family. The father and two brothers were bankers. She had also three sisters, and she was the only one who didn't get married. One of the brothers, Henry Stebbins, was one of the most important stockbrokers at the New York Stock Exchange, but he was also a patron of the arts. So he encouraged his sister to study art because she felt when she was very young that her passion was art. And so she went to the National Design Academy in New York to start studying art. Interesting also is that the National Academy of Art at that time was downtown, and it was in the same building of the first public library in New York City, the Mercantile Library, that was co-founded by another brother, John Wilson Stebbins. And so she started there, and so she had the means and the time and everything to preparing for a career as an artist.
Do I remember correctly that one of the administrators, one of the chief administrators of the National Academy of Design was also taught her, was a mentor to her, no?
At the academy, so she started like all artists copying the masters and painting, but she discovered soon that her real passion was sculpting, which is pretty unusual for a woman. Because sculpting requires also strength, and it was not usual at the time, not even now, I think. But for a while, there was a very famous sculptor, the one who did the bust of Brown, the anti-slavery hero.
Oh, yes,
yeah.
yes.
And so she started studying sculpture with him.
Yeah. Okay. In 1856, aged 41, Emma made a transatlantic crossing by ship with her widowed mother, Mary, and her unmarried sister at the time, Carlene. They were traveling to Rome. Was it already Emma's intention to settle there in order to expand her career as a sculptor? And do we know why she traveled with her mother and sister, given the dangers of ocean travel at that time? Were mother and sister traveling as tourists who returned home to America, while Emma settled in the city among this group of other young women artists?
The mother and the sister, and in part also Emma Stebbins, went to Rome as the Grand Tour. So Rome was part of the Grand Tour that wealthy Americans would do to admire, of course, the masters, the paintings, and all the masterpieces. But Emma knew that she would stay there because for a sculpture, Rome was the place to be at that time. First of all, in America, there weren't schools for sculptures. There were schools for paintings, but not for sculpture. And so she knew that to become a professional sculptor, she had to stay in Italy, in Rome. Also, she knew that there was already another American woman sculptor there, Harriet Hosmer. And that's the first thing that she did when she went to Rome, to go and visit Harriet Hosmer's studio. Talking about the danger of crossing the ocean, yes, it was very dangerous because very often ships would
Sink.
simply sink. So that's amazing that these women, and especially Emma and her wife, Charlotte, would cross the ocean twice a year because also the other artists and the other Americans who had a house or an apartment or something in Rome, they would go usually to Rome in October to spend the winter for the mild climate and stay there until spring, late spring, witnessing all the religious ceremonies, the Easter, that was fascinating also for the Protestant Americans. And then they would leave in June, more or less, because they were afraid of malaria that was in the Campania, the countryside, but also in Rome. And so go back to America in June. So they would go back and forth, and it took at least 2 weeks to cross the ocean. So it was a long trip and dangerous, as you said.
Yeah, I know. What was the principal obstacle to women artists of Emma's era in achieving expertise in drawing or sculpting the human figure, especially the male figure? How did Emma, living in New York, overcome this?
No, in New York, she didn't. Absolutely. In New York and in America, for women, it was forbidden to study the male, any model, any nude model live. It was absolutely forbidden. And it was also kind of forbidden in Rome, actually. But there were ways to go around this. In Rome, there was the French Academy, where women were allowed and where women could study also from live models. And there were, above all, private schools in places, I mean, pretty obscure, where they could study also from naked male models. And the other thing, why Rome? Not only for women, but also for men. There were many men sculptors from America living and working in Rome because there was the right kind of marble. At that time, the American marble was not okay for sculpting. And instead in Rome, Rome is very close to Seravezza and to Carrara, where there was the marble used by Michelangelo and all the other masters. Also very important, in Rome there were a lot of artisans, of carvers, very, very good in helping the sculptures, because very few people, except of course professors of art, know that from Canova, I mean, the most important neoclassical sculpture the sculptors would make a model, first the draft drawing, then the model in clay, and then they would translate the model to marble with the help of many workers who specialized, I don't know, in the fingers, in the feet, drapery. In curls.
The drapery.
Yes, drapery. And Canova and all the other sculptures would just do the final touches. So in Rome, there were a lot of these very good artisans, very cheap also for an American artist. Finally, there were models. So all the we can go to. Okay, this is of course the Bethesda fountain. This is a map of Rome at that time, the second half of 19th century. All the artists were living around Piazza di Spagna and around Trinità dei Monti. And doing my research, I learned a very funny thing, that on the steps of Trinità dei Monti, there were all these models, men, women, old, young, and each model was specializing in a character. So there were young women specializing in Madonna. There were old bearded men specializing in shepherds, small children in also. So they were waiting to be hired by the artists.
Right,
So the artists
right.
would go there in the morning and hire them.
Yes, yes.
What else? Yeah, so many reasons to be in Rome.
Yeah. And of course, as you say, Canova was, the premier neoclassicist that they would, emulate. Before Emma arrived in Rome, there was already a group of 6 American and English women, all single ladies, who lived together at 28 Via del Corso, including Charlotte Cushman, who you mentioned, and Harriet Hattie Hosmer, and the journalist Grace Greenwood. Hattie Hosmer would write to her American patron, Wayman Crowe, that they were all spinsters because, quote, an artist cannot marry. She specifies later that she is referring to women artists. Yet in 1858, Charlotte Cushman, who was this famous American actress, largely but not exclusively Shakespeare roles, and she took on male and female roles. She wrote to her girlfriend, Emma Crowe, Wayman Crowe's daughter, "Do you not know that I am already married and wear the badge upon the 3rd finger of my left hand?" She is making clear to Emma Crowe, who is sort of a girlfriend, but not, well, we don't know to what extent, but she is making clear to Emma Crowe that her commitment, Charlotte's commitment, is to the other Emma, Emma Stebbins. So do we have a picture of the two of them?
We have, okay,
Oh,
that
now
was,
we have to go.
no,
we
go
can- okay.
ahead, go
Keep
ahead.
going.
Keep going.
We'll come back to the other
Yes, we
stuff.
come back. Oh,
There we go.
so this is the couple. Sitting is Charlotte Cushman and standing is Emma Stebbins. So this picture was taken in 1856. So as soon, 1856. So as soon as Emma arrived to Rome, Emma met Charlotte in one of the salons party. So they were working hard, but they were also partying hard. They had
It's Rome.
yeah, in a letter, Charlotte says that sometimes they had 3 parties a night to go on. So they were living also the la dolce vita, of course. So as soon as Emma met Charlotte, she fell in love with her, and Charlotte as well. As you said, Charlotte was very, very famous, both in England and in America, and she played very well both as a Romeo or as Lady Macbeth, and she had a huge success, so much that she was very wealthy, and she could afford having a house in Rome, and a big house, because she was hosting all these friends. She was very generous with other artists, journalists, all her friends. Talking about Via del Corso, William Story was one of the American sculptors men in Rome, and he was very jealous of the women. In a letter to a friend, he said that these lady sculptures, they lived in a harem.
A harem.
Yeah, harem in Via del Corso. Yes, Harriet Hosmer, we can go back. Yes, here. No,
No,
before. Yes.
Yeah.
So Harriet Hosmer was from Boston, and she was dressed like a boy. In fact, when
Nathaniel Hawthorne.
Nathaniel Hawthorne met her, he wrote in his diary, "Oh, she looks like a boy," and he was kind of confused about what she was. And she was really, she was very brave and very. She did, for example, here she's riding a horse with Emma Stebbins because
Right.
they became immediately friends. And another jealous artist, American artist, he wrote that Harriet Hosmer wants to show that a Yankee girl can do whatever she wants, even in Rome. And he was willing that the police would stop her, but the Vatican police couldn't care less about, an American girl doing her own thing. Yeah. And so next picture, talking again about Harriet Hosmer. She's in the middle. She's the only woman in the middle with the white shirt. And because the sculpture men were so jealous about her success, they accused her to be not the real author of her statue, and she sued them. She won, and afterwards she had this photo. The title is Harriet Hosmer and Her Men. Those are all the helpers in her studio. So you can see so many artisans helping her, and she would use this photo as a marketing promotion of herself. So she was very brilliant, right, and very marketing oriented also, and while Emma Stebbins was not. Harriet Hosmer was convinced, as you said, that an artist could not get married, but she had a companion or several companions also in her life. We can go on. Well, this is one of the things that Americans would do for fun. It is a cover of a very famous guide for Americans going to Rome. So they would visit the Vatican museums at night. So the guide would, light the statues, and I guess that the light wouldn't go too low on that nude statue and similar things. Next, okay. Of course, the other reason to be in Rome was that they could study the masterpieces by the Greek and the Romans. This is Braccio Nuovo in the Vatican. It is the same as it was 150 years ago when Emma Stebbins would go there to study from the masterpieces. Next, I think. Okay, Emma and Charlotte. Emma was very shy.
May I just say that they're nearly the same age.
Yes, Charlotte was 1 year older.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Charlotte was from Boston.
Yes, and she also was. She also promoted the women artists. Charlotte, she took. I mean, she made a real effort to help Hattie and Emma. To help their careers, to help advance them. Talk about a marketing expert.
Yeah. While Emma was very shy and was just focused on her work, Charlotte was kind of a manager to her. So she was very important to get some of the commissions and to make Emma be paid, because of course for artists being paid is always quite a problem. So she was kind of a manager, and she was very good with her own finances. So she was wealthy, and she knew how to manage her wealth.
Until that moment when she discovered that she had been
cheated. Yes,
cheated by her What was he?
financial
Or financial manager.
manager, yes, it happens.
So it does happen, even if you're great at your own finances.
They fell in love with each other, and they stayed together the whole life until Charlotte died. Charlotte died in 1876 because of cancer, and they stayed together until then. Among many different problems, because Charlotte was an actress, so she was very promiscuous. So she had other lovers before Emma Stebbins, another Emma during Emma, but during Emma Crow and Emma Stebbins, but she was committed to the marriage, and so they stayed together until the end.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I wanted to show the other artist over there. So, okay, so Harriet Hosmer, that you see is in the middle and also riding a horse. Her main companion was Lady sorry, yes, again? Ashburn, yes. She made several works for her, and they stayed more or less together. The next one is Margaret Peggy Foley. We don't have a picture, we don't have anything about her. She was also the most the humblest of all this group, yes, because she started as a worker in a mill in Massachusetts, and she started carving portraits on the wooden pieces.
So it was like cameos.
Yeah, cameos, yes. She was famous for cameos, and especially in Rome, she became very good at cameos in marble. And I discovered this cameo portraying Emma Stebbins in a private museum in Maine. So she was such a good friend of Emma that she made this cameo for her. And she, okay, yeah, that's it.
Next.
This is Anne Whitney, also from Boston. So several were from Boston, and she arrived in Rome in the spring of 1867, and with her companion already, who was the painter Adeline Manner. She defined themselves as in a Boston marriage. Again, another definition by Henry James.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Could we agree that at least among some of the women, they were obviously gender non-conforming, which is to say that they presented in their dress and their manner what we might think of as butch.
Especially Harriet Hosmer.
Especially Harriet Hosmer, right? Who was sort of a tomboy as a child, and then grew into a grown-up butch. Yes. And whereas Emma Stebbins was much more traditional, feminine, Victorian in style.
Yeah, as you saw in her dress.
Right. So I think it's interesting to be aware of that. And was that to some extent a challenge to the Roman in Rome? Were people put off by it, Romans, if they would see that? Or did they just think, oh, those Americans, you know?
Yes, I would say it was like that, exactly. I think there were two reasons they were, there was more tolerance, much more in Rome, in the Rome of the popes than in America. First of all, because they were in a very small community, a foreign community of artists, and they had relations with Romans only either at very low level, the servants, they had many helpers from the cook to the maid and so on, or with the aristocrats. And the aristocrats in Rome, the so-called black aristocracy, were even more eccentric than the artists. Really, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if you ever watched a Fellini movie about that, so you would understand what they were capable of. And in fact, Harriet Hosmer, but also Emma and Charlotte, for example, they would go fox hunting in the Campagna with the Italian aristocrats and the English aristocrats in Rome. So one reason was that. The other reason was that the priests, the popes, if you don't bother them directly, they couldn't care less. And you must remember that there were popes with sons and with lovers. And I mean, they were not exactly the epitome of Catholic moral. So no, I even I had a friend who was working in the secret files of the Vatican, and so I asked if there were reports from the Vatican police about these women. No, nothing. There was really, they couldn't care less.
Right. And maybe also because they were women.
Yeah.
They didn't have the power. They couldn't accumulate the power for it to make any difference. And of course, as you already suggested, the male American artist gave those women a rough time. Yes, could we say?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. I mean, publicly, making commentary that was really unkind and challenging to the women.
Mm-hmm. But they stood all together,
Yeah.
and yes, and they fought against that.
Yeah.
Very quickly, the others. So far, they were all with the women companions, and these are the other four women. One is Louisa Lander, who is the author of Virginia Dare, a beautiful, you see down in the second row, Virginia Dare, who in the statue now is in a garden in Roanoke, yes, in South Carolina, North Carolina, sorry. And she was criticized because Virginia Dare is almost naked. It has only a fishing net around her hip. The other one is Florence Flory Freeman, also from Boston, and that is a bust that we still have about from her. The most famous right now is Edmonia Lewis, the only non-white women artist. She was half Native American and half African American. The mother was Native American, the father was African American, and she was helped a lot by Charlotte and Emma. They raised funds to help her sculpt a statue that was sent to Boston to show like she was a very good artist. Notwithstanding the color of the skin, they wrote in a kind of in a letter, but they wanted to help her.
Yeah.
And below her, you see a statue that was at the Met last year. There was an exhibition about African Americans through the art, and that was a statue by her at the Met. And the last one is Vinnie Riem, who is the author of a statue of Abraham Lincoln that is in the Rotunda in Washington, D.C. Right now. Yes. She was the youngest, the last coming to
Rome.
Rome.
Child here.
Yes, she was very, very young. Okay.
Yeah.
Very briefly, and then we go on with our discussion. You can admire other works by Emma Stebbins in New York City. This is Christopher Columbus in Brooklyn, in front of the Supreme Court of the state of New York. Then we have this Samuel in the Brooklyn Museum of Art. It is in a storage, but I hope that we'll get it out
Yes,
sooner or later.
I think we need a marketing plan.
Yes. Oh, and by the way, very good news. Right now, in the new American wing at the Met, there is a bust by Emma Stebbins, the first statue at the Met by her. And the bust, the model is the same of Samuel and is the same of the four putti under the Angel of the Waters. And the model is the son of her sister Caroline, who stayed in Rome, by the way, but married an English painter. And one of the children was this one. This is John Wilson Stebbins, the brother of Emma Stebbins, who co-founded the Mercantile Library. And this bust is in the Center for Fiction in Brooklyn. That is the library, the institution.
The Brooklyn Public Library? No.
No. This is the Center for Fiction in Brooklyn.
Okay.
That used to be the Mercantile. So the Mercantile evolved in that. And what else? Oh, these are very important, the sailor and the miner. So Emma Stebbins was an innovator in many ways. And she was the first American sculptor portraying workers. So this commission was by a merchant who made his fortune with shipping and mining. And so he asked Emma Stebbins to do something to advertise his businesses. And she made a sailor and a miner in a classical, very neoclassical style, but they are dressed like the working, like workers. And this was never seen before, and we never seen until the 30s with realistic.
Social realist.
Yes, exactly.
And sorry. Industry and Commerce.
Yeah, Industry and Commerce of the Man. And these are at the Action Museum in Long Island, Huntington Village. And the very good news is that next year, at the end of September, there will be the opening of the first solo exhibition of Emma Stebbins' works. So they are at the Action Museum. They are getting statues from other museums. They are buying new stuff, so it will be a big event. I'm very proud to be part of that. Finally, Emma Stebbins is buried in New York City. She died in 1882 for lung disease because she was very meticulous, very perfectionist, and she didn't use helpers. She did everything by herself, so she was breathing marble dust for so many years, so she got lung disease. She is buried at the Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, a beautiful place. I don't know if you ever visited, it's fantastic. The grave is very small, the tombstone is very small. We started an exhibition, my family and myself, Glauco, my husband, my daughter, her whole family, looking for her, and we could find it only because she's one leg of the gay resident of the Greenwood Cemetery. I don't know if you know that every year, twice a year, I think, there is a tour on the trolley in the Greenwood Cemetery visiting the gay residents of the cemetery. And she's one, of course, of them. So there was
the flag.
So we found it only because the flag was there. It's very touching that there is no mention that she was an artist, but there is a quote from a letter by St. Paul, I think, to the Romans, saying that love is, you can read it?
The fulfilling of the law.
Yes, love is the fulfilling of the love. So her message of the law. Yes, love is the fulfillment of the law. So the only important law to for God is love.
Love.
Yeah. So I think we have finished the. Oh no. Yeah, I was forgetting. So since the publication of my book, I discovered many other things, and I discovered that the Bethesda Fountain and the Angel of the Waters are so famous that they copied the whole thing, the fountain, the angel, and everything. You know where? In Ho Chi Minh City, in Vietnam.
Vietnam, wow.
Yeah. Where they built a park and they wanted to give the park a New York flavor. I don't know why. And so I was told by a friend who lived in Ho Chi Minh City for a while that you can find the Bethesda Fountain in Ho Chi Minh City. Definitely. Okay.
Could we just, on that note,
Yeah.
in the book's early pages, you give a picture of the hygienic conditions in New York City and the diseases that resulted. How does this information prepare us for Emma's later inspiration for the Bethesda Fountain's Angel of the Waters, both the gospel passage that she herself credits as inspiration and the reservoir that was built miles north of the city years before that the fountain memorializes?
Yeah, that's very important. We didn't talk why we have an angel and a fountain.
Right.
The Bethesda Fountain, first of all, the Bethesda Fountain, the Angel of the Waters, is the only monument in Central Park that was commissioned by Central Park. All the other statues that you see around were proposed by private citizens or private associations and were accepted by the park, but the private citizens paid for the monuments. So this that was the only one, and it was meant to celebrate the arrival of the first aqueduct to New York City, because until 1842, when the fresh water arrived from the mountains upstate New York, people would have to get the water from wells in the city, and the wells were very polluted because the city was full of factories, very polluting factories, and the hygienic conditions were horrible. There were,
Cholera outbreaks.
Yes, cholera outbreaks, and in the first half of the 19th century, thousands of people would die of cholera and other terrible diseases. So the fresh water brought health water, finally drinkable water.
The Croton Aqueduct.
Yeah,
and
that's
Croton
the Croton
Reservoir.
Aqueduct. Yes. In the city, the first receiving reservoir was where now is the Great Lawn in Central Park, and the distributing reservoir was where now is Bryant Park.
Bryant Park, yeah.
So Emma Stebbins knew that the fountain had to celebrate this, but it was her own idea to make an angel on top of it. Why? Of course, she was living and working in Rome, where the angels are everywhere. There is a whole bridge to Castel Sant'Angelo full of angels, for example, churches. But most of these angels are definitely warriors. So all the archangeli, they have swords, they are fighting dragons, evil demons. Instead, this angel of the waters is totally different, is very androgyn. But first, let's go back to the meaning of the angel. So in the inauguration of the fountain, she explained that the reference of the Angel of the Waters is to a passage of a gospel by
St. John.
St. John, where he wrote about the Bethesda pool in Jerusalem. And around this pool, there were a lot of sick people, blind,
Yes.
not able to walk and so on. And every now and then, an angel would go down and stir the waters.
Stir
the
the
water.
water.
Thank you. Stir the waters.
Yeah, sorry.
And the first sick people jumping into the water would be healed from any problem, any illnesses. And so Emma Stebbins wrote that instead this angel is there not sometimes and not just for one sick people, but this angel bring health and healing and peace to all the citizens, to all houses in New York City every day, every moment. So that is, an explanation about the angel.
I think it's just a beautiful sentiment that we have this, I think, quite wonderful fountain. And the reason, the inspiration for it is, in fact, bringing health and healing to the entire city. I mean, a city that was really ravaged in the earlier 19th century, where thousands of people would die from a cholera epidemic or dysentery or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's I think it's quite beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And talking about the way is this angel. If you notice, so a critic from the New York Times, who was not very nice to the statue, said, "Oh, the face is a male face, but then this angel has breasts, has bottoms, and it's very scandalous because you can see under the transparency of all the robe, you can see the form, which is feminine." And so he said, "Oh, it's a mosaic, it's a horrible mosaic." He didn't like it at all. While others instead, they praised it because of the harmony that suggests. So, and sorry, I was forgetting. In the same program where Emma Stebbins explains the meaning of the angel of the waters, she calls the angel as a woman. She wrote that the angel, has in one hand the lilies. The angel, is a messenger of God. So she calls this angel a woman, a she, exactly, which is quite amazing, because, as I said, usually you imagine the angels, at least in Italian, they are male. Un angelo, yes, it's a.
But you see how important pronouns are. Oh, yes. Oh, what was the critical response and the public response to the angel of the water at the time?
Yes, as I mentioned, only the critic in the New York Times was totally against it. But Charlotte thought that it was because it was paid by the Pittsburgh founders. Because the Angel of the Waters is in bronze, and at that time the best foundry for artistic works was in Munich, in Germany. And so the model was sent to Munich, and it was cast in bronze in Munich. But the founders, the foundries in Pittsburgh were kind of
insulted.
Yes, insulted. And so she thought that the article was promoted by the founders in Pittsburgh. All the other critics on the New York Herald, that was the most important newspaper at that time, not the New York Times, and also arts magazines and so on, they all praised the statue. Was very, very well received, yes. Ironically, so the problem is that she was commissioned the Bellezza Fountain in 1863, but it took 10 years to be inaugurated. It was inaugurated
1872.
Yes, 1873.
73.
73,
Yeah,
10 years.
yeah.
For many, many reasons. Munich, the war between France and Germany at the time, financial problems of the city during the administration of the
Mayor.
yeah, Tammany,
Tammany Hall.
yes, who really, I mean, they stole a lot of money, and so when it was inaugurated, Central Park didn't have a lot of money, and the ceremony of the inauguration was very, very low profile, and there was no big speeches, no big orchestras, and most of the audience were German families because they were proud of the Munich war. Yeah. So in the articles about the inauguration, I read an article saying that so they applauded the statue, they were happy, and then they went to get a beer at the bar nearby and ice cream for the kids.
Good. Let's see. Oh, this is an uncomfortable topic, but one I think we need to at least see in full perspective. You know, Maria Teresa explained that her brother Henry Stebbins was an important figure, and was one of the important commissioners of the park, of Central Park. Well, of course, naturally, some people thought that it was entirely a matter of nepotism that granted Emma the commission to do the statue for the fountain. Do you want to address this?
Yeah, absolutely. I address it in my book.
I know.
The people saying that, interestingly enough, were not during Emma's time. I mean, at that time, nobody pointed out that the brother was a commissioner. For two reasons. One is that Henry Stebbins was known as a very honest civil servant. He was a broker at the New York Stock Exchange, but he was also very active in the civic and political life of the city. He was a Democrat senator for a while. He was the chairman of the commission who denounced the Tammany administration, and the 2 years when 63 and 64, when Emma got the commission, he was in Washington, D.C. as a senator, by the way. He was not a commission. But most importantly is that in 63, Emma Stebbins was already a famous sculptor, was said one of the best American sculptors, no matter men or women in the world. And in fact, in 61, she had her first exhibition in New York City at the Goupil gallery. That was a gallery from Paris. They had a place also here, and she had four works there. The industry and commerce that we saw before, a bust of Charlotte Cushman, and also the Lotus Eater. That was her first statue made in Rome. It was another very provocative statue because it was the first statue made by an American woman of a nude male. So this Lotus Eater, inspired by by the Odyssey, the episode of the Lotus Eater in the Odyssey, is totally naked except for a few leaves strategically
Well
placed, exactly. And so she was the first woman daring to do that. And you should imagine that even for male sculptures, portraying a nude statue was not really well accepted in America.
And I think we might also add that the architect of Central Park, I mean the landscape architect, Olmsted, and Calvin Vaux, they had no objection to her being given that commission. So clearly, they didn't think that she wasn't up to the task.
Yeah, and we know that Olmsted and Vaux had very strong opinion about what to do in Central Park. I think we have a few minutes for questions from the audience, if you have any. Want the mic? No. Okay. Yes.
So I was wondering who designed the fountain?
Who designed it?
Yeah.
You mean the fountain itself? as
Emma
opposed-
Stebbins. They did everything. Yes, she designed everything. No, not just a statue. Yes. There are drawings before she got the commission on the annual report of Central Park, and it was totally different from what Emma made. So she designed and she did everything. Yes. And there are no documents saying that Vaux told her what to do. And Vaux, after a few years in an interview, he said that he was totally satisfied by the way she did. His only input was that the fountain, the statue, had to represent the love between humans and nature, among humans. So love was the theme, and he said that the Angel of the Waters was perfect in satisfying that input. Yeah.
You mentioned a couple of times that it was known that these women lived together in Rome. How much was there any comment in the press or other sources about Rome is full of women who live together? I mean, apart, you mentioned Henry James and so on, but I mean, did people talk about this, or was it just quietly overlooked?
It was quietly overlooked, yes. Also because the idea that women could have erotic needs was unknown. I mean, they didn't talk about that. The term lesbian was invented by a German psychiatrist at the end of the 19th century. So after these women lived together already. There was already the notion of homosexuality among men, yes, and it was not permitted in America, of course. But the idea that women had, sexual desires, even in relation with men, I mean, women were meant just to have kids, right? To get married and have kids. So it was kind of not, I wouldn't say tolerated, it was ignored. There was not. Also because many women live together, probably not as real couples, but just to get company. Because, for example, teachers in universities, if they got married, they would lose their job. So very often they stayed unmarried, and not to be living alone, they would maybe stay together to share the house and stuff like that. So these relationships could go, I think, between very chaste friendship to total lesbian relationship, like Emma and Charlotte. The families were not always very happy with this. In fact, we have letters where, especially the family of Emma Stebbins, which was a wealthy and very well-known family in New York, they were not happy, and they tried to, obstaculate their relationship. The family, instead of Charlotte Cushman, were more, concerned about the money. They thought that Charlotte spent too much money with Emma promoting her work.
What is the fountain made from, and has it needed to be restored?
The fountain is made of bronze. And yes, there is a lot of work to maintain the fountain. At the presentation of my book at the Italian Cultural Institute, one of the speakers was the person of the Conservancy of Central Park in charge of cleaning and keeping in good shape the fountain because of the water, the weather. Sorry?
Weekly,
They do weekly, but then during when they dry the water and when they put the water again. And one of my sources actually is one of the descendants of Emma Stebbins, Miss Alison Tang, that I mentioned in my book. And she donated the money to the Conservancy to keep the statue, the Angel of the Waters, and the fountain in good shape. So she pays for the maintenance, which is time-consuming and also expensive.
Would imagine.
If there are no other questions, we may finish here.
Yeah, great.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you all.